That was CNN political analyst Carl Bernstein reporting concerns about President Biden have been growing inside the White House over the past 6 months. Two congressional Democrats now calling for President Biden to drop out of the 2024 race. Jared Golden of Maine and Lloyd Doggett of Texas. A new report from Reuters claims there could be at least 25 Democrats who call for Biden to step aside if he seems shaky, and that could be happening in the next few days. South Carolina Congressman James Clyburn, a strong Biden ally, now saying he would support Vice President Kamala Harris if the president does drop out. However, Harris says that Joe Biden is their nominee, and she's proud to be his running mate. But even former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is admitting concerns about Biden's health are legitimate. I want to bring in Texas Congressman Randy Weber. He's a member of the House Energy, Commerce, Science, Space, and Technology Committees. Congressman, good morning.
Good morning, Cheryl.
What are you hearing from your colleagues on the other side of the aisle and frankly, the state of disarray that we are seeing right now in Washington?
Well, of course, you're hearing the same thing we're hearing, and I'm actually seeing more than I'm hearing. When you see them huddled together, when you see all the unbelievable, well, I should say the unbelievable disbelief that the liberal media has come out with since that unbelievable, if you want to call it a performance. It's only a matter of time, my opinion, before they will seek to replace him because they can't afford to put him forward. If he's this way now, Cheryl, how's he going to last another 2, 3, 4 years? It's not practical.
Well, and that is what you mentioned, the liberal media. Washington Post headline, brand new editorial, Joe Biden should step aside now. This is the Washington Post. Another Washington Post article. Harris is no riskier for Democrats than Biden, because now what we're seeing in these polls, 538 in particular, is showing that President Biden's approval rating is now lower than Kamala Harris's, Congressman. My question to you as a Republican, though, if you're the Republicans, don't you want Joe Biden to stay in the race?
Well, of course we do. We believe that given what's been happening in our country with an open border, with inflation, with their war on energy, with I don't know what the final count is or what the current count is, sadly, 4 or 5 women who have been raped, tortured, murdered, some killed, of course, by illegals who aren't even supposed to be here. And yet Biden the whole time did nothing for the border, and the border czar, Kamala Harris, quote unquote, did nothing for the border. I think people are paying attention, and they will not want the Democrats back in power.
Well, you know, and the Wall Street Journal writes that right now that it's to your point that Joe Biden's issues, it's not his infirmity. It really is Afghanistan. It is inflation. It is the border crisis, his handling of the wars in Ukraine and Israel. I want to bring in my colleague here. She's got a question for you. Go ahead.
Congressman, politics aside, Joe Biden at least has 6 months left of his presidency. Are you concerned for the national security of the country in those 6 months?
Well, yes, ma'am, I am, because as I already alluded to, 4 or 5 women have been raped, killed, and just unbelievable. And that's the ones that we know about. I know there's probably been other incidents. The safety of American citizens ought to be first. You know, I'm a member of the Border Security Caucus in the House, mostly Republicans, and we meet, and we had one of the officials from CBP come speak to us, I guess, about 3 weeks ago. And he gave us the facts and figures that since October, 52,000 special interest illegal aliens, as they call them, special interest. That means from countries like Afghanistan, Iraq, Iran, Yemen, Syria. 52,000 they have handled. That doesn't include the gotaways. So if 10% of those 52, that'd be 5,200. And if only 1% came in, that'd be 520. And how many terrorists did it take to bring down the Trade Center towers? 19. We don't know who's in this country, and Harris and Biden are to blame.
Mm-hmm. What you're saying, and what Tricia brings in as well, which I think is a good point here, is that the job of the presidency is literally the most important job in the world, especially right now because of what's happening overseas and at our southern border. And there's this new report from FoxNews.com that looks at how potential President Harris would actually handle what you're talking about, immigration and the border, finding not much is going to really change if she were president. She supported rolling back Trump-era border policy. She called for a sweeping immigration plan that provides a pathway to citizenship for millions of illegal immigrants that are living here. And she's known for her work on the root causes of immigration in the Northern Triangle. But critics dub her the border czar, say that she's been ineffective as the role as migrants have been crossing the border from around the world, sir.
Well, absolutely. When I was in the Texas legislature for 4 years, my second term, I was the vice chairman of the Borders Committee. It was bad in 2011, 2012. It is so many multiple times worse. I've been to the border now probably 10, 12 times, maybe more. And what I see just breaks my heart. We are being invaded. We can't be a sovereign country if we don't have a secure border. It's just that simple. And the Democrats just, for whatever reason, don't get that.
Before you go, I do want to ask you, put on your energy hat here for just a second, sir. The White House is telling us they just sold 1 million barrels of oil, to lower gas prices in Northeast states. This is coming as we're going into tomorrow, which is July 4th. A way to watch the press secretary yesterday on this issue.
As a record Americans travel for the 4th of July, President Biden is taking action to lower gas prices. While President Biden has unleashed record energy production, including affordable clean energy, congressional Republicans are siding with big oil to give out tax cuts while keeping prices high for families.
Congressman, your response to that?
That's unbelievable. You know, in my Gulf Coast district, we have 7 ports. We produce 65% of the nation's jet fuel, almost 80% of the nation's military fuel. 60% of the strategic petroleum reserve is in Texas District 14 that I represent. We know what's at stake. The fact that the president is giving away, releasing 1 million barrels of gasoline, he's trying to compensate for his war on fossil fuels. And for his press secretary to say Republicans are siding with big oil and trying to keep prices out, that's just disingenuous and an out-and-out lie. We're doing everything we can to produce more energy, and the more you produce and the more you sell, the lower the price will be. Mm-hmm. And that's just a fact of economics. Mm-hmm. And the fact that they don't get that, and it's their blatantly bad policies that are causing this process. And they want to blame it on Republicans. It's really sad.
Right. Well, obviously, there are moves with the SBR, and I would also point out with Iran in particular, and the lack of the enforcement of the sanctions is all about keeping oil prices lower. And you keep gas prices lower in an election year. Congressman Randy Weber. Congressman, thank you for being here.